Assalamualaikum. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Suhaiza, the Director of UAC, and welcome to our third public talk. I'm thanking each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us here this morning for this talk. It is truly an honor to have both the speaker and the moderator to discuss the topic on Malaysia Madani towards a dignified economy. In today's world, we face a multitude of challenges that require innovative and creative solutions. With that in mind, today's talk brings you the experts who will provide valuable insights into the key issues facing our society pertaining to the economic growth in Malaysia. Our speaker and moderator for the topic today are experts in their fields with years of experience and expertise that they are eager to share with you. We have with us today Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dato Sri Dr. Sulaiman Mahbob as the speaker and Yang Berusaha Dr. Rizwan Kushari as the moderator. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri currently is the chairman of the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, MIDA, and Yang Berusaha Dr. Rizwan is the principal assistant director at the Ministry of Economy. Therefore, I invite you to listen, engage, and contribute to this morning's discussion as we come together to create a better future for all through Malaysia Madani. So without further ado, let's get started. Thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you will find this talk valuable and insightful. Hi, and over to you, Doctor. The floor now is yours. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. My name is Rizwan. I'll be your moderator for this session. Alhamdulillah, all praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by whose grace and blessings we are able to gather here today. On behalf of the organizing committee, let me first extend a warm welcome to our honored guests, Tan Sri, and all the participants. I am indeed pleased to moderate the third public lecture series for the year 2023 under the Ungku Aziz Thoughts and Public Policy Program. This program is organized by the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies, or better known by its acronym, the UAC. The UAC was formed in recognition to the many contributions made by the Honorable Allahyarham Professor Diraja Ungku Aziz for his tireless work in the field of poverty and development in Malaysia. Part of the activities of the UAC is to organize lecture series such as this. This series have become a platform for sharing, discussing, debating ideas and ideals on current topics of interest. Today, we are here to listen and discuss on another topic titled Malaysia Madani towards a dignified economy. This session will be presented by Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dato Sri Dr. Sulaiman bin Mahbob. Before we get to that, let me introduce Tan Sri. It's an honor to introduce him. Tan Sri is such a prominent figure in Malaysia that actually needs no introduction. But he even has his own Wikipedia page. But it's nice to know his contributions to Malaysia. Tan Sri is a Johorian. Looking for it. He was born in Pontian in 1949. He was a career civil servant before retiring to join the private sector. As a career civil servant, Tan Sri had served in various ministries and agencies like the Ministry of Finance, the National Economic Action Council, and the Ministry of Trade, Domestic Trade and Consumers Affairs. His last posting as a civil servant was as the Director General of the Economic Planning Unit of the Prime Minister's Department. As mentioned just now by Professor Suhaiza, Tan Sri is currently the chairman of MIDA, and he had served in various multinational companies like Telecom, Petronas, Felda, as group chairman and board of directors, respectively. To this day, Tan Sri is still called upon by the government to give his views and lead selected bodies. So it is an honor to be listening to him today. And Tan Sri is someone who loves to impart his knowledge and wisdom. And he has been teaching and doing research for various years, many years, and have written many articles over, since for a long time. So without further ado, let me welcome Tan Sri to give his speech titled Malaysia Madani Towards a Dignified Economy. To you, Tan Sri.
Terima kasih, sahabat saya, Dr. Ridwan. Thank you, Dr. Ridwan. Ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a pleasure and honor to be invited by this center, to discuss a topic that is very current and topical. What's called Malaysia Madani. I thank you all for taking the time. I also thank Professor Suhaizah, who has invited me to participate in this function. I thought the topic Malaysia Madani is very, very important. It's something that all of us should reflect. So when Suhaizah gave me another topic, I decided to take this topic because I think we need a lot of reflection on just these two words, Malaysia Madani. I linked that Malaysia Madani to a book that I read about 1 or 2 years ago called The Dignified Economy by Jean Spellman. He has been advisor to about 4 presidents of the United States, so I read it and it's published by Penguin Press and in 2020. So Malaysia, this particular introduction of Malaysia Madani was made on 19 January 2023 by our Yang Madani. It is not new literally because he was already using this word Masyarakat Madani in the early 1990s, I'm mistaken, when the Prime Minister in Ministry of Finance, and I had the honor to work with him throughout the early 1990s, So the word Madani gives a reflection of modernity and civilization. So the word civil society, civil, something like that has been coined to reflect Masyarakat Madani. Okay. Let me just start by saying that Malaysia is noted for having long-term development plans. The first one we had was the New Flag Policy 1971 to 1990, and that was developed in the aftermath of the crisis, social tension in Kuala Lumpur and other areas. So resulting in the need for long-term development that addresses inequality in the country. So we have long-term development covering 20 years, 1970. After which it was taken over by Vision 2020 by Tun Mahathir in 1991, February mistaken. Vision 20 was introduced when he wanted to be a developed nation. Aim was to make a country developed nation, high income status and things. So those two were two long-term plans, that was used to develop the country. The first part was addressing equality, second part more like modernizing the nation, that sort of thing. So these two, if you look at in context, it is very much related to our national philosophy, our national ideology, the Rukun Negara. Rukun Negara has two parts. The preamble talks about the need for us to be, liberal towards culture and technology, and there's another the other element is saying that the benefits of economic growth must be equitably shared. So pursuit for technology, modernity, that sort of thing, and also insisting on equitable development, the sharing economic growth has been so you see these two long-term plans addressing this growth concern as well as sharing the benefits of economic development. So Malaysia Madani, the attempt, therefore, it is not literally something new, but definitely is a fresh attempt by the Prime Minister to bring back these two concerns of economic growth and equality, and also addressing the concern for addressing the need for a clean society that is not corrupted, is ethical. So I thought it was a good combination. This Malaysia Madani bringing the economic growth, equitable development, as well as important the need for ethics, humanity, and also addressing concern for good governance and zero corruption, that sort of thing. Therefore, we must also say that it is not new in terms of economic growth, because our long-term development has led to changes in our production pattern from a commodity-based economy in the 1970s to now manufacturing, more diversified manufacturing services make up about 60% of total output, and culture has been modernized. and we have reduced absolute poverty over the years, and we also achieved some element of restructuring in our economy with ultras owning about 16-17% of total ownership, and so in terms of occupation pattern, the tribes will touch about 50% in many of the top echelons of job hierarchy, such as doctors, architects, lawyers, engineers, when they were hardly 5% in the 70s, 71, when I was in APU, and also considerable improvements in quality of life, health, education, and also reduction in quality in terms of ratio, Malay Chinese income, Malay Indian income, that sort of thing, rural urban, that sort of thing. So there have been progresses based on those long-term plan. So when Dato introduced this, he wants to take it beyond that, not just stop that we've achieved. Therefore, much more yet to be done, because it's a very dynamic concern of quality, that sort of thing. And because there are new concerns, for example, interstate inequality, for example, regional or spatial inequality is a concern back again. So I think I could see, especially you can see, for example, some states asserting the right of getting better revenue from, say, from oil. So these are among the things that need to relook at inequality. What are the elements of Malaysia Madani, as by the Prime Minister on 19 January? He talked about elements of sustainability of the kemapanan. He's talking about prosperity of your tribe, and for innovation. So, well, you must moving forward based on innovation, creativity, the value added, respect, hormat, and trust. Very important of trust and as a compassion, ihsan. In other words, is moving to a very humane economy, so to speak, rather than just bricks and mortar kind of thing, or just looking at human workforce. It's just factors production, but not as human capital. Because this, I understand why because he was championing this when he was a student in University of Malaya. We were contemporaries with him, so he was championing this against those blenders and that sort of thing. Okay, let's look at in terms of the human aspect of it. Sorry, human aspect. Reinvent the economy based on humane economy or humanity. So now that we're not looking at just bricks and mortar, we're talking about, for example, acreage of land open up, number of factories open up, or buildings being created in Kuala Lumpur, that sort of thing. Also, you might go beyond that, looking at human capital, that sort of thing. Quality of life, focus social inclusion. Okay, so now that we don't want people to be marginalized from the mainstream economic development, and reduce inequality even more than we have now. Then he also insisted on democratic and legislative institutions, in order to address concern for good governance, good social and good governance, that sort of thing. So these are trust of Malaysia Madani, and also for the civil service, public administration, there's an element of some erosion of ethics, for example, with prominent cases of corruption. So bring back that respect for good governance in both private and public sectors. These are trust of Malaysia Madani, insofar as the impinge on the economy as well in the management of economic activities as a whole. Okay, what are the economic components of Madani? Look at the component. Right. One is, I may be repeating myself. It's talking about inclusive growth, inclusive sustainable growth. Inclusive means we don't marginalize people in terms of, say, ethnicity, in terms of spatial dimension, even in terms of sectoral dimension, and also make it sustainable. In other words, we must not compromise on our environment, especially the concern for climate change, this sort of thing. And so we need to look at ethics and good governance in our institutions, so that we can support and make Malaysia a good center for business and investment. See, when the past 2 years, MIDA has approved almost about 570 billion ringgit of investments in the country. So, of course, issue of social justice, make sure that economic growth you are not growing the economy per se, economic growth for the sake of growth, but growth for addressing inequality and and social and social inclusion, what we want to call it, distributive justice or social justice. So these are the components. In other words, not just pure production per se, but addressing those concerns too, as mentioned by Piano. Okay, what are the challenges to us? Challenges faced by Malaysia. We have got to achieve long-term development that's sustainable. That's very important. Not just we have been subjected to crisis, several crises, 85, 86, 97, 98, 2008, and the crisis. They definitely affected the poor, the low income. So lately we have the pandemic, 90 pandemic, a few years ago, 2 years ago. Then again, the marginalized, a lot of people, many the B40, maybe talking about B60 or something like that. And so they're talking about declining investments the past several years to reassure that confidence is back for purposes of business and investment. Investment very important in economic growth. Investment powered income development, powered job creation, and that's also very important. Investment as opposed to consumption. And so we want to address also rapidly reduce absolute poverty. Yes, we have done, but a little single-digit number. But it depends on definition of poverty. During the time we say maybe we don't now get to a few more revisit the packages, what we call the basket to make a poverty line. We may want to put some other elements so that the absolute poverty may rise up to another level of poverty, but with better goods and services. Because very important. So inequality. Don't forget, inequality can be a source of instability. That's what happened in 1969. Also, it happened in many other countries. It's always inequality that brings about social tensions. Okay, if I move further. Now, I don't want to define what is dignified economy. Maybe the book can tell much more. I just see, in developmental context, what we define as what is not a dignified economy. So maybe the following features, if it exists in our country or elsewhere, we can see that the economy may not be dignified. Remember the high incidence of absolute poverty. There are a lot of sufferings in Africa, for example. Absolute poverty still prevalent there. A significant presence of social economic equality. You see, in terms of ethnic, in terms of spatial, in terms of structural, all that sort of thing. Structural, for example, between modern industry versus SMEs and sort of thing. Especially, regional inequalities. We have highly skilled labor that undertake economic transformation. So unskilled, a lot of unemployment, a lot of unskilled workers. How are we going to do economic changes and sort of thing? Of course, presence of corruption, mismanagement, abuse of power is also undignified economy because you allow forces of greed, for example, to color our life, mismanagement, abuse of power. Then poor social protection. Now, bring that in. Social protection is very important. I'll try to define social protection in the broadest perspective later, but it's very important to be assured to maintain some amount of self-respect that we are protected by the system some way or another. I'm talking about protection in terms of defense and security. I'm talking in terms of economic dignity. So, yes. So if because of such undignified conditions, of course, we have growth, but we don't have development. The long-term issue between growth and debate on development. As remember in the 60s, that is years from Sussex was talking about this. Growth may not be development. So it's very important that we understand development. Not just to build a building and then therefore you see that it's economic development. That may be growth in terms of quantitative achievement. That's not necessarily development. The workforce still is more effective production rather than human capital. If you see workforce, labor economics students will tell you we started with labor, and then we talked about human resources, then you're talking about human capital, now we're talking about talent management, So there's some continuum there. Look at there's some, get the recognition of the intrinsic value of mankind in terms of innovation and creativity. And then so we can have owner's capital heavily rated. but wages are not. Well, our wages are maybe not good enough, but if you compare our wage bill, total wage bill in the context of GDP, we're talking about 33 to 34%, whereas Singapore and South Korea are talking about 45% of total GDP is made up of wages, and Europe we're talking about 55%. So we are about 20 to 30% less than compared. So there's a lot of avenue to wages, and because we suppress wages sometimes to reduce cost of production. But that we report. I'm not saying that's happening in the country per se, but these are the things that contribute to features of a undignified economy. And so we have natural financial resources that use to project constitutional wealth, but less on objectives. So these are the things that we portray to make the economy undignified. But we may have here and there these features, but certainly we have got to move forward, including them. Let me move forward. If this condition prevail, then what happened? I'm sure people in the sociology, study sociology, study culture, and maybe very important. The society may be suffering from hopelessness, low confidence, uncertain of future. If we have an undignified economy, we lost a feeling of hopelessness, low confidence, and you may have low esteem at individual level, your self-respect very low, and all the social institutions are ineffective in bringing about societal change. Poverty will persist, and these are the social discord, social conflict, that sort of thing. So I'm not saying they're all totally in absolute sense in Malaysia. We have definitely addressed in terms of what I mentioned earlier, quality of life, that sort of thing. But we've got to move forward on a better, so that we have a better achievement in this area. How does the World Community address this? Well, United Nations is talking about Sustainable Development Goal (SDGs) to address poverty, unemployment, food production, agriculture, education, housing. So that at the global level, we all subscribe. Malaysia subscribe to this demand by United Nations. We have achieved success, progress in many areas. But at the sustainable level, climate change sort of thing, now countries have got to implement the ESG, or environment, social, and governance. Very important. So in MIDA, for example, now insisting on our industrial investment approvals, they build by themselves the ESG, so that if they don't, you don't get them approved, or they find later difficult to find an export market overseas. But having mentioned that, I also like to say that the global economy has also experienced economic and financial crisis, which impacted low-income population in the main, the last being COVID-19 calamity. How does Malaysia fit into this sort of thing? Rukun Negara has been our national philosophy, with the objective of attaining nationality and the need to share benefits of economic growth shared equitably among the population. And this one was the new policy, its strategies. But I'd like to bring this important plan, National Integrity Plan, which was stated with of the Tun Abdullah Badawi, was talking about trying to promote a culture of good ethics and high integrity among nations, so that we can do with corruption, and abuse of power, that sort of thing. So that plan largely addresses this concern of ethics and integrity. But Malaysia Madani, to me, try to integrate these two. So I think this is something good, Malaysia Madani, because it not just addresses equitable development, but also embedded in it is that we must address good governance in society as a basis of sustainable economic development. So we cannot use abuse of position in public office, or and be a position for to take advantage, to amass wealth, that sort of thing, unethically, that sort of thing. So Malaysia Madani comes combining these two. Therefore, this is something quite good, and Malaysia must begin to think the importance of these two. We cannot just say that, okay, just let's grow, but don't bother about ethics and integrity. Yes. Okay. Let me just move forward. Okay. This is a thing I'm going to be repeating here to say that we are not in position. We have passed a lot of the stages of in our development objective. But what are our current issues that I like to share in case you want to ask the Madani? Our wage bill, our level of wages are low. Total bill in the gross national income about 50%. Our relative inequality is still high with Gini coefficient, which is a measure of concentration about 0.4. And this could have been much worse. I have not seen a new write-up on this. Academicians have not looked at this. The pandemic outbreak, I think it has crossed by 0.4. I wouldn't know, but it's something that we got to revisit. There's erosion of the social values with high level of drug-related crimes. We have high level of drug addiction in society, I think, affecting young, and this is not affecting our economically productive workforce when work, in the age of work, working age, caught in this drug addiction. That's something that's not good. Loss of manpower, loss of contribution to productivity. The prominent cases of corruption, abuse of power among public servants. Again, we saw just a few days ago some charges and queries. Some talking about public servants in some cases. It's very important. On the structural side, we have our food production heavy reliance on import sources. Is this good for food security? I'm not sure. Previously, we talked about food sufficiency, but now you're talking even more than that. Food security. We're talking about food security. That sort of thing. We have the fact that our inflation rate has gone up because of shortages in food products. Also, in addition to our weakening the exchange rate, and to become a developed country and to become a dignified economy, I think we must element of innovation, as mentioned by Mr. Madani. Therefore, in terms of the working of economy and working at the work at the level of labor economics, it's a question of factor productivity. How can our factor productivity or TFP measured by TFP, the contribution of services, contribution of research, R&D, and that sort of thing is just about 30%. Whereas countries like US, Japan, and German Europe is talking about 50 to 70%. So we are quite low. So if we want to become a dignified economy, we can sustain rises in productivity and income, that sort of thing. I think we got to consider how to make our workforce very, very innovative and creative. Because when you create product, that sort of thing, there's an element of novelty, there's an element of intellectual properties, which definitely demand high values in the beginning before they become when the patent terminated, and that sort of thing. So it's very important. The bulk part of the value of the products from the intellectual property, we got to encourage it. And we're talking about maybe the create our intellectual property maybe about 300, 400 in terms of patent registered per year. But you compare with thousands in South Korea, in Taiwan, and more so in USA. That part is very important. If you want to become a dignified economy, based on productivity, based on creativity and innovation, something that talk about. Otherwise, we're just talking about numbers, talking about quantity rather than talking about quality. May I move? The position of Malaysia Madani. Malaysia Madani comes naturally. Okay, I may be repeating this here. So, complementing and buttressing the national philosophy of Rukun Negara and the national integrity plan. So these two, Rukun Negara, national integrity, very important element of Malaysia Madani. And also bring about greater confidence and trust that Malaysia can train. All nations are allowed to participate in the mainstream economic development. So the other element is that nobody should be deprived. There should not be social deprivation for any reason whatsoever. Well, that much, but it's very important. The economic management of the country, national economic management of the country, the governance of the economy must make sure that people are given all the chance to improve themselves. The social economic planning and delivery apparatus to ensure that the underprivileged will be assisted. Yes, for those who are underprivileged by virtue of conditions of that, lack of facility because of the distance from certain amenities or something like Sabah, Sarawak, to 3 hours on boat to school, something like that. Whereas people in Kuala Lumpur, just drive away, that's a short distances. So they must make sure that we brought mainstream by the social planning apparatus of the country. They must be assisted. I'm not talking about subsidies here. In fact, this is a place where I think the government can concentrate on services to help them. The economic development is more inclusive and durable, while the potential for social grievances based on inequalities are minimized. So I think this, Mr. Madani, is to say that we want to make sure that the seeds of discord brought about by inequalities in the economy and social system should be minimized to the least. Right. Now, policy implications on this, I was thinking that this just announced about 1 month ago, in January, say about 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago. So we need to have a comprehensive study on long-term economic development that incorporates the concerns of Mr. Madani. Well, we've done a lot for the, for example, the new climate policy in the EPU these days, and I think stand up the equality in the country, stand poverty, that sort of thing. But we got to revisit those concerns again. We don't know yet. Very important. This is another. And then also need to examine this macroeconomic sectoral distribution of sustainable and equitable growth in output, income, and employment. Again, we got the structural side. We got to do a deep macroeconomic sectoral analysis of what is sustainable development, what is equitable growth in output, income, and employment. Got to see, really look at this. Have a modeling, macroeconomic modeling to look at this sustainability. We're talking climatic change and that sort of thing. How much carbon we're supposed to zero carbon by say 2050? I'll be ready for that. Examine the role of education and training institutions to support creativity and tractability. It's based on high wage level. We're talking about high wage. Then at the core of it, the role of education, universities, and training institutions that we support creativity and tractability. Something. We our education system ready for factor productivity? That's something that we got to revisit. And therefore, like I said, we can talk about Malaysia Madani, but we examine this thing as a role. Our education system. Are we doing? Are we doing the right thing towards this? I don't know. We got to examine it. Establish necessary political and social governance framework to support achievement of the above. Yes. Therefore, the political and social governance framework that we have aspected by the changes, recent changes, society is demanding some changes and reforms here and there by changing government. That's something, especially by the younger generation, is a testimony that we got to relook, examine whether our political and social governance can support those above objectives. And that is something that people, political scientists, may want to look. Public students, especially, may want to look at this. Okay, what can be done for the rapid, for the humane economy? Rapid creation of high-skilled jobs with high wages. Yes, we have been creating a lot of jobs, but we have employed foreign workers. Low wage workers from Bangladesh, from neighboring countries. I don't mention neighboring countries, from Bangladesh and those things. Nepal working in the country. So they may not be a way to achieve economic growth, but they are unskilled workers. So, and we want high wages, we must create high-skilled jobs. This must be done. Emphasis on private investment to generate high productivity. So even investment alone, you've got to make sure, make sure they only generate high quality investment, not just investment per se, but quality investment. Training education of Malaysians to be innovative, creative, ready to adopt and adopt high skill. So human economy, not just being nice to them, but they must be able to acquire skill and to contribute to that process of economic growth. Public access to opportunities for economic betterment based on individual potential. One must be given the real opportunity to improve themselves, to enhance. One should not be marginalized by virtue of the fact that you may come from a poor society or something like that. They have not, or we're far away from the city. Social and administrative governance that promote a healthy competition. Yes, well, we want to help some sectors of the economy, like trust, but based on healthy competition. It's not being just giving people just like that. there must be competition, a healthy one. This is good. You can structure, for example, system putra, and based on the element of competition. And of course, I always say availability of social protection scheme that covers formal and informal workforce. Again, social protection is very important, something that, well, we have, I'm not saying we don't have, we have EPF, we have SOCSO, we have QAP and that sort of thing, but they are largely for the formal sectors. But informal sectors, there's some grants by the government here and there once in a while. But how can you look at overall the social protection, revisit this issue? Now, looking at the structural set manufacturing, okay, an increasing share of high-tech industries that support digital economy, for example, is something you talk dignified economy, not just talking about just low quality production, that sort of thing. So it must be a high-tech industry so the economy. Modern services which are export-oriented, using high-level talent to support high technology input. Indeed, if you see Singapore's economy like in services, so to attract the best nations going there, medical science, private sector, so nations go there. So in other words, we have this skill, but we got to have good, nourished growth of modern services that are export-oriented. Our modern services largely for domestic use, largely, except for tourism, but the rest is actually domestic market-oriented. So the best talents that we have, lawyers, accountants, engineers, doctors, from Australia, simple. The small and medium industries, about 97% of industries are SMI or SMEs, but they contribute something like about maybe 30% of GDP, 30 to 35% of GDP. So that the remainder 3% contribute another 65%, 67% of GDP. So we must develop SMEs to grow up, especially automation, mechanization, and digital connectivity. Important role, digital economy, another one. So these things that will bring high income and so make the economy more dignified and consistent with our long-term economic growth. That's something. The workforce, yes, workforce. They must highly trained. Yes, we are highly trained, creative, innovative to undertake R&D activities, designing capability, development of patents and design products, which give our intellectual properties the value added. That's all. High level wages, total wage bill. Maybe you can try to achieve total wage bill, make about 50% of GDP. Remember, I mentioned just now, Singapore and South Korea is 45% GNI, gross national income, always about 3%. And then in Europe, about 55%. So it's a lot more to have labor force, force to have a better income level. And of course, ability of strong social protection for all. Again, I elaborated this point, which I will try to. What do you mean by social protection? Because the ability of formal social protection for both formal and informal economic activities, we are largely formal but not informal. If you're farmers, if you're a fisherman or something, I think the social protection access to you is quite minimal. Here and there, as well, we have some cash grant, but they are not sustained from the economic perspective. And then a health insurance scheme, that sort of thing is something we've got to develop. Too much subsidies here, but how can comprehensive housing is talked about in the 1990s, but now well developed, decent housing facilities for all is something that our housing facilities is again we continue to be very important. And adequate access to financial facility for good general education. Yes, we have the PTPTN or something, but we move forward to be more on the banking sector, for example, to assume responsibilities in terms of financial support for education. Then I have got to touch the topic of public finances for a dignified economy. It's a major concern now. We have high deficit, talking about 6% of GDP, high element of subsidy, also a lot of fiscal deficit, 6%. Or our debt is about 60-65% of GDP, which is quite large. High subsidy, at one point of time, about 20% of the government allocation of expenditure, the high deficit is 6% of GDP now. So these are things, it's definitely very important to become, to address by finance, but it takes time. It takes time. And certainly, it's an important element to make an economy dignified. right? Then also there must be a sense of accountability and discipline in fiscal and budget management. Deficit. In the European Union, there is a requirement that annual deficit fiscal deficit should not exceed 3%. So we have been having this concerns in 1998 deficit. Our revenue system that is modern system, high level income, productive, yes, our system, but system is not deficit enough. We tried GST, but it didn't work out. It's cancelled, terminated after 2 years trial. The expenditure policy, yes, the government must spend, but supportive maintaining economic stability, skill formation, productive enhancement to all. That's expenditure policy, which means if you want to have subsidies, for example, make sure it's targeted. You have a subsidy energy, but some people have more cars, therefore they consume more of the bulk of the subsidy of energy going to the rich who have more cars, for example. Whereas the motorbikers just feel maybe 20 ringgit, whereas people in bigger cars, and once they feel it's 70, 80 ringgit more. This sort of thing. And so subsidy policy will create a lot of other distortions in the price. For example, a lot of smuggling. Oil is being smuggled out and rice smuggled in, that sort of thing. So this is not consistent with dignified economy. Smuggling led a lot into the shady economy, the black economy, smuggling, that sort of thing. It's not good. And once this thing happened, the smuggling, it's a weakness in public policy, but you see it from the perspective of security, and therefore you mount police force around the border. You can't do it. Border is too long. Then your debt management policy is consistent with overall national fiscal stability. So these are the things we've got to work for in public finance to achieve the dignified economy. We cannot be using public finance as a distributive way to solve lots of problems. In conclusion, I may not take much of time, just about 45 minutes. Firstly, I think Malaysia Madani needs to be supported by all. Very important, because it aims to integrate economic and social and individual development with good governance as basis for political and social stability. Very important. First time we integrate, we used to look at just pure growth and development, or the other one, the national integrity plan, purely from ethics and integrity. But we've got to make sure that our equitable growth, our growth is equitable in nature, but it's not. And we also don't condone unethical behavior like corruption. So it suggests that a comprehensive policy from Malaysia Madani be initiated, like the way we did EP. We all in EP those days we did in-depth studies of poverty, income distribution, that sort of thing, and we have a big report on national integrity plan, and also the Wasan 2020 as an overall. But I think we got to do some policy analysis to give meaning and content to the whole philosophy of Malaysia Madani, guidance to all involved national, sectoral, and city function. For the simple reason that the nation in dire need of any reform to take to greater long-term social and economic stability. Agencies related to social and economic planning and policy researchers, government must initiate narratives to bring the concept of Malaysia Madani to more workable and practical implementation to all, from the ministry, from the department, from the federal, from the state, to the grassroots level, for example, so that we absorb the principle, the philosophy of Malaysia Madani to take this country to a higher level of achieve development and to create that to what it can be cemerlang, terbilang, and gemilang. That sort of thing is used like Tun Madani. I don't want to talk much. I think I stop here. Thank you very much for giving the time. I don't know whether I've done justice to a very important policy statement by the Prime Minister, but I tend to be challenged by you all. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rizwan. Thank you for my deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Before we open the floor, Tan Sri, just now you mentioned about attracting high, high investment and all that. If I could pick your experience in MIDA, what is MIDA's way forward in attracting high technology, investments into Malaysia?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ridwan Bashari, on this question. The MITI has launched a new industrial policy sometime in September last year, covering about 6-7 sectors, quite important. But in terms of quality investment at this point in time, to me, it must be related to digital economy. The world is moving towards AI, the world is moving towards Internet of Things, moving to big data analysis or something. So these are one thing we got to move forward. But for a start, I think the subsector that can go in immediately to me is electrical electronics. We have developed industry based on ecosystem, and that ecosystem for further deepening of technology is ready in Penang. I think the former governments of Penang, I remember when I was doing the consultancy on behalf of MIR for industry, I remember the Chief Minister was very interested in this topic. How is it we can deepen it? That's what Penang is, what it is now, because that pursuit of deepening in Penang, whereas the other states tend to let it go.
Okay, thank you.
And also the other criteria, so we are also insisting when improving the investment. Also we want to do the job that will be created. Okay. So these are the two areas. Thank you.
Yeah. Tan Sri, much of your discussion, your presentation just now centers around ethics in public sector, ethics in government.
Yeah.
We know that the government has done a lot in trying to increase the performance, the ethical nature of the public sector. What do you think that more can be done? Because if you were to look, we would think that all the cases that had been, in the media of investigations and all that, we would think that people, civil servants would be, more worried. They would increase their attention to governance. What do you think could contribute to cases where, despite all the things that have been done by the government, they still practice corrupt practices?
I think one important platform is transparency. I think if things got everything transparent, I think in terms of decision making, both in terms of the demand side and supply side, I think it will be easy. I think this is where that I think we got to design our laws to allow greater transparency in a lot of decision making.
Should there be a Civil Service Act, do you think, to govern, in a way, because right now, much of our governance is based on general orders, circulars and all that.
Yeah, I agree, because those things are quite outdated. If I say, first thing I joined service and I said, part of exam, my treasury instructions and general orders, but they have time to be revisited. The structures sometimes get revisited. Maybe we need a Civil Service Act that integrates not only in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, but integrity, transparency. That's all. It's very important. Maybe you can learn from Singapore to a certain extent in terms of. Don't forget, they are doing very well, and it's just an hour flight. Learn from them. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Anis, we'll take questions from the floor. Mr. Anis.
Thank you, Dr. Rizwan. If I can add to the introduction of the speaker that you gave earlier, one thing that I know that Tan Sri Sulaiman has always been the person to be in the position to rescue the country. Every point in time, from the first financial crisis, he's been called in, and even to the most recent Majlis Pemulihan Negara. So Tan Sri, thank you so much for your service to the nation. As always, you have been very, inspiring. This lecture, I've learned a lot. But one thing I think, in order to achieve this dignified economy, where the people are now talking about people and profit, this whole planetary health, you need to have good leaders. And I think we are having some kind of a leadership crisis, if I can put it that way. What would you advise? What kind of leaders do we need to avoid from all this power struggle that's been going on? I think at some point we need to put a stop at this in order for the country to move forward and to have this dignified economy with this Malaysia Madani country.
It's a very difficult question. Leadership, I know. I think leadership very important role to me. But if you can put some element of psychometric tests to those interested in leadership position, I think you can help. In other words, I'm sure we can develop some psychometric tests of potential leaders and then grow them, have a file of them.
We actually already have them.
Yeah. But the political party,
for integrity, we already have it.
Yes. In other words, the political parties must ensure that the potential candidates for leadership must pass the test, psychometric test of the what do you call, the mindset, the thinking process of things is very important. Why not?
I asked that question to one president of a party, and he said, "Are you crazy? I won't have any candidate to fill in."
Thank you, Mr. Anis. Okay, Dr. Suraya, you put up your hand. Your turn.
Yeah. Hi, Tan Sri. Okay. Okay.
Ini from Ministry of Defence. Apa tu? College Pertahanan.
Universiti Pertahanan Nasional.
Okay. Now I know.
All right. Okay. Tan Sri, I have one question. Referring to your slide on the undignified conditions, we have mentioned that workforce is mere factor of production rather than human capital. Okay, so we also they also mentioned on the wages. Okay, the remuneration for our labor is still at a lower level. So Tan Sri, my questions here: how can we achieve this a good the appropriate wages for our labor, because I think this is a long-standing issue for Malaysia to achieve. So way forward, what is the mechanism that we can achieve this? Thank you, Tan Sri.
From the economic perspective, it's always based on productivity. So if you nurture productivity, make our workers highly productive, I think then you can explain how much the increased productivity account for the value of the product. Then people like the trade unions can use this argument very constructively, very productive too, with the employers, that they contribute to enhancement of productivity of the factory or plantation property. Then they can demand higher wages. So the wages can be restructured to make sure that incentive be given to productivity. That's quite important to me. Because the value of the product is actually based on innovation and creativity. I mentioned just now. If your product and file for patent, the first 15 years, whoever own the product in terms of creativity or something, will have so much money. But once they become the generic stage, the value goes down. From maybe 100 ringgit per product, may just fall to 10, 15 ringgit. So the bulk goes. So encourage productivity and creativity. What is the education system to me? I'm answering your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To build on Tan Sri's view on productivity, actually, the Malaysian Employers Federation, every time we speak about raising the minimum wage, they always point out to the idea that, to reports that the productivity, the wages is higher than the productivity, right now. So, in a way, what they're saying is that the employers are paying more than what the workers should have. While it's true, but it's also on the backdrop of seeing rising cost of living. So how do you respond to that? Yeah, Tan Sri? Rising cost of living, productivity wages more than productivity.
My question is that we have been focusing, look at electronic sector as a whole. Some contribution to value addition is just hardly 15%, maybe 20% at most. You know? So we got to create real high quality production system or electronic system, whatever it is, that makes sure that the contribution to GDP to the country of that sector is more than say 40%. Ours is about 15%. We just assembly lagi masih assembly. Of course, this is maybe a long story about the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But now we may be talking to basically a different kind of thing, you know. But those days, yeah. So how can we pay them higher when there's 15%? So the value 15% divided by number of workers, you get that. Right?
Do we face an issue of innovation? You mentioned about, you know, patents. We don't have enough patent. Even Singapore, a smaller nation with smaller population, you know, the innovation is much higher than us. What do you think contributes to our lack of innovation?
Again, I may say that I think R&D contribution to GDP is very important. A lot of R&D done in this country is largely the public sector, the universities, and maybe the GLPs. The private sector don't, you know. So we got to nurture a culture by which a lot of creation of R&D work done by the private sector, and they stand to benefit. All the what do you call it, exclusive benefit they get because they own research, they have the patent, they have the right. They can from intellectual properties to develop intellectual assets. From intellectual assets, hundreds of assets you can create from that intellectual property. So you nurture that. You got to build upon that. Yeah? That's one answer to it. I may not answer, but again, at our school level, kalau boleh kita beratkan students' creativity, even from the primary school, not just kind of a regurgitating whatever taught by the teachers.
Okay, there's a question online from Chi Kwan Chia. He asked how AI potential affected the repetitive job workforce, like in the factory in the future. How can we address it to make sure with the emergence of AI in the market, it won't create the huge gap between rich and the poor?
Yeah, a few studies have been done. They said that many services will definitely become less needed because the AI can definitely be much better. Well, there are also scholars who challenge those views, but let's take it that it may affect. Definitely may affect. May not be 100% affected, but definitely may affect. For example, they say accountants. If you can have accounted by AI, maybe you can have balance sheet every day. No, for example, by the second, so to speak, make accountants redundant. But that doesn't stop from greater innovation and greater demand for services. That argument has been there in the economy for many times. But I think it is more urgent now. It's more urgent now. So for countries like Malaysia, I think we got to maybe be more creative in terms of looking at other areas that we can develop in the country. For example, do you want just be a location for production, or you want to look for services? No? Why can't we make a country center for services, high-level services, accounting, medicine, health, education? Why not? These are the things. People derive something just from services. And many of them, Malaysians work there. You know, so allow them to come here. Don't be liberal market. Let them come here, practice them here. Why must have, for example, to be a good lawyer here, you must be a resident or permanent citizen or citizen of permanent resident? Why not simply just fly by 1 or 2 days and give the best advice of the corporate sector? For example, right? Why not? You must have a, you know, in the legal professions there, you see you must be a resident or citizen to practice law. What? And the advice financial law in neighboring countries you want? I just fly in and give. This is what happens in Singapore.
Yeah.
For example, I'm giving an example.
To add that, Tan Sri, I think what do you call it? Technologies doesn't reduce jobs; they create more jobs, yes, more opportunities. Indeed. I think.
Indeed.
Yeah. Because if we were to look at many years ago, about 20 years ago, people were talking about biotechnology. The government invested a lot in biotechnology.
Yes.
But today that word is not there anymore, you know. People started studying biotechnology and all that, but the industry, it's not there. And then over the last 5 years, people, WF came up with what do you call it? 4IR, another, buzzword talking about technology and how people will lose jobs. Technically, people don't lose jobs. Their jobs are just, broadened into adopting technologies. I mean, we look at doctors right now, also, like you mentioned just now, accountants, they're still accountants. Even customer service, people say, technology will take away customer service. It is still, there is still customer service. Okay, someone from Intan, I don't have your name there.
I'm Amin.
Oh, Amin. Okay, Amin, please. Yeah.
Okay, just on inclusivity. As we know that one of the most important aspect that we need to think of is the issue of imbalance of economic growth between states, and we are largely dependent on Selangor, Penang, and also Johor for our GDP. So I think when we are talking about the ideas of digital economy, skilled workers, innovation, or AI, I think it's too far-fetched for other states like maybe Perlis, Kelantan, or other states like Sabah. So what do you think? What is your take on that? Thank you.
I thought the IT system will definitely allows inclusivity. The element of distance can be minimized because all IT based, that sort of thing. I've seen many lot of people with IT, capabilities and something working in mana tu, Pulau Bali, holidaying there, but with their laptop all everywhere. The moment they come out from the swimming, they bring their laptop and they work and submitting their work online. So I have a son who just carry a laptop, and his time is always San Francisco time. He's always working time while holidaying KL. I mean, these are the things that we got to examine. Maybe our facilities for digital economy are bad in Kelantan. That's, for example, 5G tak ada ke, broadband tak ada, and that sort of thing. So I think the IT system can minimize exclusivity. Remember, a lot of accounting reports in the world are done by people in India and Pakistan. A lot of the corporate sector financial reports from US and UK have been done by chartered accountants in India, and then they send back. So the accountants in US sleep. The Indians are working, they send back in the morning, the reports are there. The balance are done since again. So where is the exclusivity? Correct. I may not answer you correctly, but I think there are a lot of opportunities still.
Yeah. To add to that, actually, recently I saw in Arau they have McDonald's. So McDonald's is an indicator of a visual indicator of development. So if we were to look at Arau having McDonald's, that means there is a bigger industry there. They're growing. One thing of interest, just to pick up on that, Tan Sri, just now earlier you mentioned about intergenerational. Sorry, Rolia. Okay, let me. Rolia, okay. All right, just to pick up on intergenerational. DOSM came up with report, not say report, every year they come up with a report stating that the rate of urbanization has increased to 78%. That means the rural areas are getting smaller, cities are getting bigger. So how does this fit within the Madani? Will the rural poor actually be the urban poor now, or an increase in urban poor?
Yeah, I think I have a word called urbanization. You urbanize the rural areas, bring the urban elements into the areas so that they can come and stay there. There's no pressure on land, there's no pressure of population density, and with better road system and IT system, they can be still connected. In fact, in some parts, yes, people travel 70, 80 miles away per day, because they are connected. So I think we could develop that way by improving the IT system, connectivity, digital economy, so that they retain them in rural areas, but they have all the urban facilities. Why should they want to be having traffic jams in Kuala Lumpur when they can take the way home? So bring urban elements into rural areas, urbanize them, if there is such a word, rural urbanization, urbanize them, and then give facilities, better digital economy, better 5G and what you call broadband or something.
All right then. Okay, Farah Hanif actually asked about AI. That one I think we have discussed just now earlier. Dr. Nusraya again, she's asking a question: how defense sector can be part in contributing and achieving a dignified economy? From National Defense University.
Yeah, I know she's from the National Defense
Okay.
College. Yeah, I think it's a very good question. Defense is quite a major spender, but a major sector get a lot of budgetary allocation from the government and that sort of thing, but how will we make sure that rather than we import those stuff, those gadgets, so to speak, how can we encourage the absorption of our military personnel, those technologies, and help create new products, defense products, do research R&D, and then make them absorb the technology in those defense sectors. Number one, I mean, we just buying it, then we got so you become just military. Number one. Number two, I think because of our maritime what you call concern, interest in the country, the Navy, there's something, a lot of things they can contribute to the dignified economy by using our marine resources for support marine resources, for example, that sort of thing. So again, that's kind of quite important. Remember, shipping lines using our Malacca Strait for 100,000 ships annually using our Malacca Strait. Can they work together with our Navy, that's what in terms of ship repair, ship production, and our East Coast is lots of challenges, so that it's contended by so many nations now. So there's a lot of importance in the defense sector to upgrade the technology, to improve them, whatever it is, so that they can play a good role to dignify the economy, to help dignify the economy in terms of the defense sector. Again, this is a big area. I may not know much, Dr. Suraya, but certain things you really look at. If you open up, how can you dignify? How do you enhance, protect the economic dignity of the country? People don't incur into our fishing areas by the Vietnamese sort of thing. We are not catching the fish, but they catch the fish. We catch them transparently. That's how can we help? I don't know, but we got to look at this jointly from how the Navy can help contribute in that sort of thing, and then help our oil resources of Sabah and Sarawak. That's something. Those are again the Navy can help, the Air Force can help. That's something. So just giving the security and that sort of thing, but nurture the kind of technologies that will beef up your what you call your operations. So R&D is quite important in those sectors.
Tan Sri,
Yeah.
I want to ask a question about the elephant in the Malaysian economy. Over the last 5 years, we've seen that we cannot run away from discussing about Bumiputra, in the economy.
Yeah.
So with the equality, in dignified economy is talking about irrespective of race, color, and creed. So how does Bumiputra actually policy fit within this context? And okay, that's the first question. And then I will get to the second question later.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. The first question is how does Bumiputra policy fit within this context? And secondly, how do we encourage Bumiputra to actually invest more? Because if we were to look at one of the pillars of the economy, one of the objectives of the country is that Bumiputras are not investing in the market. And this is actually pulling resources when Bumiputra don't, I mean, they're qualified to, there are a lot of successful Bumiputra companies, but they're not stepping up into investment. They're not, expanding their business beyond, wherever they're doing. So that is actually pulling resources from other areas into the Bumiputra, policy.
You were using pooling resources, P-U-L-L or P-O-O-L?
Pool, P-U-L-L.
That's
You're pulling
exactly.
resources.
Yes.
Yeah.
I prefer that they should pool their resources, P-O-L resources, so that their position can become stronger, and then the bargaining power to get places, get shares in some of the sectors, important sectors. So the mutuals are not pooling their resources, P-O-L, rather than maybe what they've done so far is through PNB dan sebagainya, kan? So I think the pooling of resources, for example, the doctors, the accountants, become, big size auditors and sebagainya, that sort of thing can be done. They have the reached. As far as NEP goes, Dr. Ridwan, I think the most successful part of NEP, other than eradication of poverty, is reduction of occupational inequality. I think when I was in EPU in 71, 72, you get the numbers, hardly 5% of accountants, doctors, engineers, architects, lawyers are Malays. Hardly. No, they're over 50%, some even more. So to say that they cannot acquire the skill, cannot compete in the market is now, I think they are ready for competition. They should rise up. The lawyers, the engineers, the doctors, the architects, they should be prepared for open competition. If you want to help me, the very low income, and very, just basic, kind of very, very basic, maybe just contract 50,000, less 1,000, maybe. But the big one, they can compete. That's the thing. That's to me. That's one area. There is we haven't opened up the whole Islamic economics. We have not opened up much. Something. Remember that Arahano and the mortgage system, I think, doing quite well, helping the small scale. Machi, we loan 5,000. So that is helpful. The micro finances that you got. So we got to grow it, and that sort of thing, how to become higher. I think that even learning, we can learn from the Chinese. Chinese, a lot of pooling or POL. I'm not talking pooling POL, pooling resources to work together. That's what sharing of expertise and that sort of thing. So we can have a lot of joint ventures with non-Biput trust, and we can share expertise and so on. Because Malays are the professional now. We can.
All right. Okay, we have one from Amir Ridwan. He said that we need high quality talent to develop high-tech sector and achieve wage growth. But on the other hand, it seems Malaysia is quite weak in terms of talent retention. He's saying that, our industries are training our STEM graduates, and the STEM graduates are running off to Malaysia with their higher exchange rate. So the issue here is, his issue is that we have problems with talent retention. Sorry.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All Malaysians now, whether it be Malays, Chinese, Indians, given a chance to go abroad, they work. And so I think it's something that we got to face. See, we are neither Singapore nor Indonesia. Singapore is labor surplus. Sorry, Singapore is labor small population, but big GDP. Indonesia has a big population and big GDP in terms of quantum. That's something, but they have a lot of labor. So we don't have, in between just about 32 people. So I think it's something that we got to really analyze. We got to go for literally high productivity sectors. Literally got to have it so that we can pay out. Literally, I have no qualm saying that this is very important. Even in agriculture, for example, high productive agriculture.
Okay, here Muhammad Khairul Ashraf. In the future, Malaysia can no longer depend on Petronas for our national income. Can the reintroduction of GST be an alternative, or are there any alternative than GST? This one is actually related to what you mentioned earlier about reforms in public finance. Yeah. We are not taking advantage of our area taxation. So the question here is related to reintroduction of GST in Malaysia Madani.
Yeah. You see the fact that there were some weaknesses in GST in the beginning when in 2015, 2018, thereabout, doesn't mean that GST is not good, but we may not have formulated it well. Example, that's something. But why about 150 countries have a GST? That's something. This is something that we got to examine on the economics of the taxation system, efficiency. Remember the three canons of taxation that I learned with economics was the efficiency, effectiveness, and economy. So we must make sure that we implement GST very well so that we get the revenue expected out of it. There's something. But we MIR is trying to recommend a harmonization with the present sales tax, so that government can still get easily a bulk of the revenue loss with some minimum change in some of the current laws in the sales tax. It is something that we can consider. But whatever it is, broad consumption-based taxes like sales tax and GST, we got to move it. But to make the system efficient, and there's cost to it. Example, if it is too cumbersome to but in terms of collection may not be that much simple. So we got to address that part of customs tax collecting agencies. But no two ways. We must move towards broad consumption-based taxes. No two ways about it. We start from how taxation evolved from land-based taxes, and that's on moving to street-based taxes. Street-based taxes and income-based. The next thing is consumption-based taxes. That's all. So let's do it, because consumption make about 65% of GDP wherever you are. So you buy, you can. So that's the question is how to make it efficient. Again. So kalau those too laborious or too cumbersome to get yang very difficult at the bottom of them, ignore them. Go to other sectors.
Okay.
But I heard my friend Dr. Subro, former Customs Director General, and Dr. Virendrajit Singh was talking about in one forum. I mean, there's some harmonization of this that can generate a significant amount of revenue to the government now without having to do GST. Something that the Treasury must pick up. And we have a paper done by MIR on this to argue on this point.
Okay. Anantan Subramaniam, you put up your hand. You have a question? Anantan Subramaniam?
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, loud and clear.
First of all, thank you very much for this session. I think it's about time we talk about Malaysia Madani. We keep hearing this, but really, as Tan Sri you pointed out, I think there's no policy paper as yet. Until such time we have such a paper, then a lot of things can become clearer, and people who are responsible for execution will be able to follow some form of guidance. But as it is now, we don't have, I believe so. So is there any plans or any workshops, anything like that being undertaken? For example, I'll give you the defense white paper, which is a policy paper anyway. So that was formulated extensively through a lot of roundtables, discussions, and so on. So, Tan Sri, do you believe we should adopt such a measure to come up with a comprehensive policy framework so that this will be a guidance for a long-term plan? And what happens to plans like the shared prosperity vision and things like that? Will this override, or what do you see the way forward for a new approach to developing Malaysia, the economy, the social development, and so on and so forth? Thank you, Tan Sri.
Anandan, I thank you for your question. Like I said in my presentation, several other plans, for example, a long-term plan, we're talking about economic per se or development per se, but we have not integrated the element of ethics, integrity, clean society, that sort of thing. I think YB Anwar's suggestion is good because they combine the two. We cannot be a dignified society. How people are corrupted, how people, abusing their official position. We should not have that. We must be dignified. Dignity. Malaysia, dignity. I mean, you and I, you don't want your children katakan later caught in corruption and sebagainya. Tak mahu kan? You want to live so that your name is good. So that thing is quite important. So let's make it a very important element of our social makeup. We are not corrupted. We stand by our example. So I agree with you. We must have that study combining these elements. So it must be institutions such as, for example, government procurement. Don't give to anyone. Open bidding. Open competition. If you want to have ultra or to have any sector committee that need to be accepted, it's still competition. Invite, this subsector is meant for this group of people, or this group located in this area only, for example. If you want to help the local, but make it competition. You compete by yourself, you get the best. Not I give A, B, C, tak boleh. So I want development with ethics and integrity. That should be the brand of Malaysia. And be proud. Be proud to live our years, our children. And we Malaysians definitely have no cause to be quarreling with each other. For example, our children, they are Malaysians. They have these values. Hard work, work ethical, not corrupted. This should be the value, the brand name of Malaysia, the dignity of Malaysia we should fight for. Don't you think? And we need this study. We need the production. We need to study the production. What can be high income, agriculture, industry, services. Those are the income side. Yes, high income. You must have dignity. You must have high income. Yes. On one hand, the system that go along with it, must be equally emphasized to make sure there's greater transparency, greater integrity. There's no abuse of power.
Okay, we have last two statements. We are short on time. One is from Chi Kwan Chia. How can we, via higher education, to empower and encourage more indigenous nations to embrace competitive culture? If not mistaken, we have one scholar argue that due to cultural factors, some groups of people dislike to embrace competitive culture. Okay, that one. Then Amir Ridwan mentioned about perhaps some comments as well on innovative capacity in Malaysia. I read a World Bank report in 2021 reporting Malaysia as performing quite well in terms of process of innovation, but we are the worst in terms of introducing new products and services for the whole region. So one is about competitive culture, the other one's about introducing new products in the market.
Yeah, the competitive culture, I think there's so much we can do in terms of a legal system. We have the anti-monopoly laws and anti-competition law under Mr. Domestic Trade. Then we have also, for example, the public sector procurement processes that make sure competitive bidding. Yes, but more often than not, I think this must it must be ingrained in our culture that we must compete. We must compete. Like in sports, we appreciate competition. So I think there must be the same thing. Nurture that culture of competitiveness. But we must help those who are deprived of the amenity, deprived of the facility by virtue of unfair disadvantage. For example, you're very far in Sabah or in the rural areas. Boat pergi sekolah 2-3 jam, balik 2-3 jam naik boat. Some electricity supply in Sabah just 2 jam, 6 sampai 8 malam, or 7 to 9 unfair. How they will study. These are one of the things. But we must encourage competition. Maybe from the schools level, yes, from our at home competition, healthy competition, of course. We don't want unfair trade. We want fair trade practices. Fair trade practices. We don't have fair practice. Well, fair trade is the law yet. We have anti-competition. What else? Now the government is talking about examining monopolies. Yes. Well, we allow monopolies for utilities, but the structure of utilities have changed now. So that some of them can be open to competition in that sort of thing. All these things must be reviewed, that sort of thing. And even you want to give competition monopoly to certain companies, it must be time bound. Shouldn't have more than 30 years of monopolistic position. We shouldn't have. You cannot make money in the first 15 years. Don't expect to make money in the next 15 years. this thing, it's a good market must be done. This is what called the Madani, modern civil society. Malaysia Madani, that's can be basis for our future strength. It's in terms of competitive culture. Sorry.
All right. We are at the end of this session. So if I were to sum up, what Tan Sri has presented, Malaysia Madani towards a dignified economy, I think one of the areas that is sorely in need is actually governance in public sector itself. R&D culture, innovation, more higher end investments, competitiveness and all that. Tan Sri, would you like to say last words before I wrap up?
I echo friend Ananda just now that we all of us in some position here in public position must try to examine how can we carry out this mission Madani? How can we get them translated into our work program, that sort of thing, so that it can materialize into a culture that can be practiced by many Malaysians. So thank you very much for attending my presentation.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Okay, before we end, on behalf of UAC, I would like to thank Tan Sri for taking the time to give a speech at this session. I hope that everyone benefited from this session and their own takeaway from this session. I would also like to thank Yang Bahagia Datin Sri Professor Dr. Suhaiza Hanim, the director of the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies, and the organizing committee for this session. I'm sure that everyone enjoyed and probably would like to invite you again, looking at a lot of questions. I'm sure there are a lot of questions more. And lastly, since we are celebrating Raya in a few days, I would like to wish Selamat Hari Raya to everyone. Maaf Zahir Batin. Drive safe and happy holidays to all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you. Selamat Raya. Selamat Raya.